Well, as you can tell, I'm not your regular priest today. I'm Darrell Golnitz. I am a pastor in the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, but I have been a speaker with Food for the Poor since 2010. And it is a privilege for me to be here today on behalf of the poorest of the poor through the ministry of Food for the Poor. So I want to thank you as a congregation. I know I'm not the first speaker you have heard, and I have big shoes to fill with the ones that I know you've had previous to me. I also want to thank you for your gifts, and I want to thank you personally because they have made a difference among the poorest of the poor between life and death. So thank you for your compassionate giving as people here at St. Patrick's. I also want to thank you for reprieve. I got a call from my daughter after I took this assignment, and she says, "Dad, on this weekend I'm moving into my house, a condo, and would you come and help me with a little painting and a little flooring?" Well, dads do that, you know, but I didn't anticipate a 600 square foot of flooring and a 20-foot cathedral ceiling for painting. And since I'm not about to get on a ladder anymore, my job was the flooring. So I must confess that I use the Old Testament lesson that's regularly appointed for this day as well as the Psalm. And I'm going to give you a peek at both. And certainly the gospel is the same. And you're going to see how it all connects with that gospel. The Old Testament lesson, from the Psalm 82. Give justice to the weak and the orphan. Maintain the right of the lowly and the destitute. And Amos, as he was asked to address the people of Israel, the Lord showed him, it says. This is what he showed me. The Lord was standing beside a wall built with a plumb line. With a plumb line in his hand. So even though I chose the theme of this message before my daughter gave me a call, guess what I had in my hand as I did the flooring? A plumb line. And I'm told that unless you start with that plumb line, you can forget about what you're going to have in the end product. And here the Lord is sharing with Amos, the people need to see the plumb line. I told you I'm the one doing the floor. I started with a plumb line, but I'll have to tell you you'll have to wait a couple days to see if it holds true on the other end, because I got a lot of work to do yet. But the plumb line, God gives us a direct plumb line. Give justice to the weak and the orphan. Maintain the right of the lowly and the destitute. A straight plumb line. So when the lawyer, who thought he was hot stuff, asked Jesus, "What must I do to inherit eternal life?" Jesus says, "Well, what's in the law?" He knew it by heart, the Shema. Love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, with all your mind. And your neighbor as yourself. Then that lawyer made the mistake of asking, and who is my neighbor? And the response of Jesus is the plumb line. The one who showed him mercy. Go and do likewise. I am here today to show you the plumb line and to connect us who are first world Christians with the poorest of the poor, the least. And you may remember those other words of Jesus that the Gospel of Matthew records, where Jesus says, if somebody is hungry, you feed them. If somebody is thirsty, you give them something to drink. If somebody is sick, you take care of them. If somebody is a stranger, you welcome them at your door. And if somebody is in prison, you go visit them. And he said that not just because they're hungry, thirsty, in prison, sick, or a stranger. Notice what Jesus said, when you do it to the least of these, the orphan, the weak, the destitute, you do it to me. Two brothers of a successful shipping and import business in Jamaica were trying to make sense of their faith with those words of Jesus. When they were making profit, good profit, in a country that has the poorest of the poor. So they started to use their company profits and purchase or get bags of rice and distribute them. And then pretty soon we're building houses. And now within 37 years, that was in 1982, in 37 years now, Food for the Poor has grown to become the largest international relief agency located in the United States. And it is a ministry. That's why I'm a part of it. And that's why your priest responded to the invitation for a speaker to come. It's an ecumenical ministry. There are anywhere from 60 to 90 of us in any parish or congregation across the U.S. today, this morning. And among those, there's probably about 60 priests, 50 priests, 30 Lutheran pastors, then Episcopal, Methodist, and we have been sent to lay the plumb line. Because in doing so, we know that when you and I are connected with the poorest of the poor, the least, we are connected to Jesus. Food for the Poor wants to make sure that what we say to you is the experience of what your compassionate giving has done. So every couple of years we have the opportunity to go on a mission pilgrimage to one of the 17 countries in the Caribbean and Latin America. And I want to share with you an experience I had with Honduras, where, as I mentioned about the orphan, we visited several orphanages. There's over 35 orphanages that are supported through your giving with Food for the Poor, and over 7,000 children, youth, young adults. I'm amazed at how those orphanages are directed and staffed by angels. And I'm amazed at what God does with those children. One in particular that just blew my mind was an orphanage dedicated entirely to HIV children who were brought to that orphanage as infants because their parents died. And by the way, the rest of the children who were not brought by infants, it's not because parents abandoned them. It's because parents willingly give them up. Because they know in the orphanage that their children are going to receive 3 meals a day. Where if they were at home with them, they might go 3 days without eating, let alone safe water to drink. What was amazing about this HIV orphanage is now the children that were brought as infants are 18, 19, 20 years old. They're thriving because of the medicine that is a result of your giving. Medicine that is administered by the nurses in the hospital care. And now those children who are young adults have tremendous gifts to give. One 12-year-old girl had this articulate penmanship of using pencil in doing these beautiful paintings, drawings. And now the biggest challenge for that orphanage is the discrimination in the community for those young adults to go out and work. So here's what Food for the Poor is doing. They're building halfway houses so the community can experience the gifts of these young adults and how they have so much to give. Then we went on to see the fishing villages. We went on to see all aspects of feeding over 1 million people a day throughout those 17 countries. And then we started to head out of a large city next to Sao Paulo, where the main airport is. We headed out, and I remember it well because it was a week after Pentecost. And pretty soon, garbage on each side of the road, we were following a truck. And then in front of us started to ascend off the horizon this black mountain. And there were fires burning on that mountain, reminding me of the tongues of fire on the disciples' head. But as we got closer, I realized we're going to the dump. We're going to the dump that day to meet the families that work the dump. And as we started to go up the switchback of that dusty black mountain with our little van, I was caught by those fires. Because the fires were burning all kinds of garbage. Everything imaginable, including dead carcasses of animals. But if you do not have funds enough to feed your children, or you do not have the aspect of being able to provide shelter for your family, where do you go when you die? But to the dump. And here, as we got to the top of that black mountain, we were greeted with excited shouting and singing, smiles so wide because the families were welcoming us to their home. And as we stepped off that van, I thought ingenious of these people working the dump. There were 2 poles about 20 feet apart, stretched with a tarp. I thought they're providing shade while they worked. But they led us around. There was a sofa. There was a chair. Welcome to my home. Maria, in particular, wanted to excitedly show us her home. So there were 4 or 5 of us that followed her down. Maria with her 2 small children, they're boys with rubber boots on, probably 7, 8, 9 years old. As we followed her, Maria could speak articulate English. She says, I know that God takes care of me and my family. He has taken care of us in the past. I know that He takes care of us now. And I know that God continues to take care of us into the future. She had such a wide smile making that witness. Maria, mid-30s, barefoot, 7 months pregnant, about to give birth to her 3rd child in the dawn. There were 2 poles. There was the tarp. Welcome to my home. Maria was greeting me, a stranger, into her home. There were also black garbage bags, 30-gallon bags on each side of her sofa and her chair that she offered us to sit. The black garbage bags were filled with recyclables. That's what you do to work not only to get your food, but the little boys with the rubber boots pick up the recyclables. The truck drivers aren't too concerned about little boys running around, as you can imagine. They gather them. Once a week, a truck comes, picks up those garbage bags, and leaves them a pittance in return. I don't know about you, but I have a hard time wrapping my head around that experience and knowing that those poorest of the poor are so close to our shores. It took a sociology course in college for me to understand I grew up in poverty on the plains of South Dakota. I didn't know that. I always had 3 meals, as I shared with your father this morning. That's really a lie because I had 5. And they were from the garden. The best meals you can imagine. And then I always had shelter over my head. Me and my 3 brothers. Oh yeah, if you were with us in January, if you had a glass of water beside you at night, do not be surprised if that water was frozen in the morning. But I was warm as toast, wrapped in an electric blanket. And now I know more than ever before that I had 2 parents that because they were from immigrant fathers and grandfathers and grandmothers of a farm, the most education they could have was through 8th grade. And the 7th and 8th grade was taught by the local priest as a part of their confirmation. But I know now how much they sacrificed in order that me and my 3 brothers not only survived, but thrived. So winding back down that switchback, I had a hard time wrapping my head around that. And it was getting dark, and it was getting where we were not only tired, but hungry. Catch the irony of that. And I thought we were heading back to our lodging. We'd been on the road since 5 in the morning, and now it's approaching 7 at night. And we stopped, and I was ready to get off because, quite frankly, I had had it. But there was another 35-year-old gal with wide open arms welcoming us to the orphanage that she directs, and she'd been waiting for 2 hours because that's how far we were behind schedule. But she picked up as if we were there on time. She led us to the end room of this orphanage, in dormitory-like building, because she wanted to show us the children that they had received just that past week. So the door opens, and here are these kids smiling, singing, dancing, running up to our leader. 3, 4 of them were gathered or grabbed his neck. He was holding them. But I had a hard time getting through the door because immediately on my right and immediately on my left were 2 sets of beds. Each bed had a child, probably 7, 8, 9 years old. But they were inside a 4-foot wooden cage with slats that you could see through. I looked at the one on my left. He was in a fetal position across the bed away from me. I thought, what do I have to offer here, Darrell? And I kid you not, maybe it was the Pentecost that I experienced, not only in the Black Mountain, but previous Pentecost Sunday. And what came to me was the song that my mother, who taught preschool Sunday school for 60 years of her life, taught me as a 3-year-old in her class. Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world, red and yellow, black and white, they are precious in his sight. Jesus loves the little children of the world. That started to play in my head. I started to sing it softly. Pretty soon this little boy rolled over from his fetal position and he scooted his little butt across the bed. And he stuck out his arm through the slat. Jesus loves the little children. Okay, Darrell, what do you do now? What kind of communicable disease does this child have that they're in a 4-foot wooden cage? All the children of the world. I grabbed his hand and held it and kept singing, Jesus loves the little children. He let go, and he got halfway back and children of the world. He came back and he put both arms through the slats. And I held on to him because at that moment he was holding me up. I don't know what you will do about the plumb line we've all been given, but it is very direct. Give justice to the weak and the orphan. Maintain the right of the lowly and the destitute. And did you notice that Jesus used that plumb line with that lawyer? Who is my neighbor? The lawyer asked. And he said, the one who showed him mercy to the neighbor. Jesus said, go and do likewise. So this brochure that you have identifies, I know you've seen it before, it identifies ways you can be a part today. $34 a month you can sponsor a child like Gregory and be in communication with him or her. Or as I mentioned earlier, St. Patrick's could do a project. $3,800 a month is matched, or not a month, $3,800 is matched by a generous giver, and it provides a home for a family that has never had a shelter before. When we got back from that mission pilgrimage, 2 months later, received an email. And that email had a picture of Maria with her newborn baby, with her 2 little boys and her husband standing in front of their brand new home. A gift from people like you. That it has 2 bedrooms, a 50-gallon Brita system, or if it's a part of a housing project, they are able to get a solar-powered filtration system that provides 10,000 gallons of drinkable water per day. A flushing toilet, a shower, and a solar-powered light. Because until you have your own shelter, you live in the dark. This becomes an envelope. Give what you're able, remembering. And if you need more time than the offering, I'll be in the narthex. If you need more time than that, check it out on the website. Verify the things that I've said. In the meantime, people of St. Patrick, we know the plumb line, don't we?